Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to join today. We're going to be exploring the concept of motor pool management and how it continues to impact fleet operations today, especially in the context of police fleets. So before we dive in, make sure that we're all on the same page, I'll introduce myself. My name is Claire Flowers. I'm a product manager at Fleetio, which is a fleet management software company. At Fleetio, our mission is to help organizations streamline the way they manage vehicles and equipment. So in my role, I work directly with engineers and customers to help design our system in a way that helps you guys meet all of your fleet management goals. And so in my role, I specifically focus on fleet operations, which means I'm deeply involved in solving for problems like maximizing vehicle utilization, determining the optimal replacement cycle for assets, all of the fun stuff. But today we're going to focus on motor pool. So it's a practice that's been around for over a century, but now we're experiencing kind of a resurgence of new technology that's transforming and making things a lot better. So Fleetio works with a lot of different industries, anywhere from construction, contracting, landscaping, transportation and logistics. And so while I was preparing for this presentation, I had the opportunity to speak with a lot of police departments, and I've really enjoyed learning about your unique challenges. For anyone who's unfamiliar, motor pool is essentially a shared fleet of vehicles available for use by multiple drivers, typically assigned on a shift or as-needed basis. The practice is not new. My dad likes to remind me that motor pool is as old as cars themselves. So what is new is the new technology in reviving and reshaping motor pool practices in the modern era. So today, a little bit about what we're going to cover. We're going to take a quick look back in history. Don't worry, it won't be a history lesson. We're going to look at how fleet assignment models have evolved over time for police fleets, the pros and cons for those different approaches, operational challenges for police fleets today, and how new technology is helping reimagine motor pool management. First, I'm going to start with a little question. So raise your hand if you can tell me the price of this 1972 police cruiser back in 1972. Bonus points if you can do the pre-upfit pricing. Upfit.
At the 4,200.
4,200, okay. Pre or post upfit?
I'm not probably center.
Okay.
I'm a 36 pre.
36 pre? Okay. Anyone else?
Wow.
Okay, so this police cruiser after upfit was 3,500. So you're pretty close. I was shocked when I saw that. Can you imagine these cars $3,500 today? Also, in my research, I came across this gem, which was a report back from 1972 about fleet practices, but they had it all down to a science. So really, the main thing that's changed today is cost. So let's see. Okay, so brief history. I promise it'll be brief. So back in the beginning of the 1900s, police departments began adopting the Ford Model T. But the cars were expensive for the time, and not everyone really knew how to drive them. They were brand new. So many officers relied on motorcycles instead. Fun fact, after World War I, Harley-Davidson had donated 90,000 motorcycles to the U.S. Army. And when the war ended, police departments snapped them up and started to use the motorcycles in conjunction with their new Ford Model T fleet vehicles. So then we move into the 1950s and the 1970s, and motor pool was a standard practice. 1920s through 1930s, they were in centralized garages. Vehicles were hard to come by, but into the 1950s and the 1970s, motor pool was standard practice. They most of the time had multiple drivers per car, and everything was a centralized shared asset. It wasn't until the 1980s that we saw a major shift in suburban and urban areas where police fleets started adopting the assigned to each individual police unit. So that was going on for around 2 years, but a big drawback to that is extremely expensive. So in the 2000s, 2010s is the first time that motor pool really started to digitize, and new software solutions came about to help aid in the assignment and utilization of fleet assets. Until today, many departments had started to shift away from the assigned directly to an individual to kind of a hybrid model, so a shift-based pool, and also for maybe higher ranking officers, they have specifically assigned vehicles. So today it's pretty much hybrid, but new technology is starting to bring motor pool back. So throughout history, the core benefits of motor pool have remained the same: cost savings and operational efficiency. Fleets can reduce total vehicle count by up to 15%, which translates to around 3,000 to 8,000 in annual sales per vehicle. So quick math, every vehicle that you take out of your fleet can save you around $3,000 to $8,000, which is big savings. So looking at these two models compared to each other for how this is essentially a hybrid model. So we have our vehicle assignment models, which the pros of that is high accountability. So officers take care of their vehicles that they own. There's less wear and tear, there's fewer accidents and cleaner interiors, which is why this model is very, very popular. It also increases shift readiness. So immediate availability, if an officer is called in, they're ready to respond instantly. Also reduced wear. So less officers that are in one vehicle reduce wear and tear, so the unit has less maintenance costs over time and lasts longer. But the cons are upfront costs. So raise your hand if you can tell me the price of a fully upfitted police car today.
68,000 for a Tahoe.
For a Tahoe? He's saying no.
Completely outfitted?
Completely upfitted.
We're at 77.
77?
85.
85?
Yeah.
That's correct. All of those are correct. I have a range, which is 70 to 90. So from 3,500 to where we are today, it's significant. So just imagine if you're wanting to advocate for cost to go to a purely assignment-based vehicle. With every officer that you have essentially a $90,000 price tag for a vehicle. Very expensive. Also, idle time. Vehicles tend to sit unused when officers are off duty, so utilization tends to go down. And then if we look at the other model, which is a shift-based model, the pros are fewer vehicles required overall, so reduces fleet size and cost. Also has a centralized maintenance scheduling. It's easier to manage, so they're all in one place. You can service them all at the same time in the same place. But cons for the shift-based pool is much lower accountability. So when everyone shares, no one really feels responsible. It's higher wear and tear from multiple drivers, and then reduced readiness. Officers may have to wait for vehicles or deal with missing keys. So traditionally key management was done manually, like a logbook, a drawer of keys, someone assigning vehicles, and today technology is automating a lot of that. So let's go through some of these across these different models, the main challenges that we have with both assigned vehicles and shift-based pools. We have three key challenges. One is shift readiness. Officers are relying on shared vehicles, may face delays in a car that isn't returned, fueled, properly equipped. Idle time waiting for keys or vehicles unprepped can impact a lot of response times, which is no good. So shift readiness is a big challenge today across these different models. Also accountability. I heard a lot about this in talking with fleet managers for police departments. In the pooled models, vehicles can suffer neglect or can become overutilized and suffer extreme wear and tear. A fleet manager told me during the Crown Vic era, where bumpers were constantly being cracked. Raise your hand if you experienced this. Not to age you guys. But yeah, they were cracked constantly, and Ford literally couldn't figure it out. They're like, why are our bumpers cracked? And it turned out that they never cooled down. The exhaust pipe was always hot, so it was causing the bumpers to crack. So this is more of a hot seat model. So these units were just going constant wear and tear. And the accountability was hard to really enforce, essentially. So, and no single officer really felt responsible for the maintenance of these vehicles, and so problems went unaddressed. I'd say that the third is, of course, cost management. Take-home models strain budgets due to high purchase and upfitting costs, and pooled models reduce acquisition costs but increase maintenance expenses over time. So the truth is that there is no one size fits all, right? Motor pool is definitely not the answer to everyone's problems, but it can be used in a way that can help reduce and increase vehicle optimization. So given all the challenges that we've discussed, it's no surprise that there isn't a single perfect solution for vehicle assignments. But every department has its own needs, budgets, constraints, and operational realities. But what we can say with confidence is that hybrid models combined with the advancements in modern motor pool technology offer the best path forward. So Hybrid models allow departments to balance accountability, readiness, and cost, and while new software tools help maximize fleet utilization and eliminate inefficiencies. So we're going to take a closer look about how this plays out in practice. So reimagining the officer experience through motor pool technology. Okay, so traditionally the start of a shift meant walking into a garage or a lot, tracking down the available vehicles, hunting for the keys. Someone has to keep hold of the keys, or you have an expensive key box. Asking someone which cars are ready. Maybe you accidentally take the wrong car and it's not fueled, so you're late to where you need to be. So that's the old way. Now imagine instead that booking a police vehicle is as easy as just unlocking your phone. That reality is here. It's not far away. Technology is currently doing that. Keyless access is here, and it's creating a lot of efficiencies across different fleet models. So modern motor pool technology is transforming the officer experience, which is becoming increasingly important today as some departments are experiencing recruitment challenges. The officer experience is becoming more and more vital. Okay, so talking through the benefits of modern motor pool technology. It optimizes for accountability. So accountability has always been a challenge with pooled fleets, not just police departments. But today, automation eliminates many of these gaps by a few ways. So automating data capture, no more handwritten logs or manual odometer readings. Vehicle usage, mileage, fuel, and condition are tracked automatically through telematics. Now today, you can track those things through digital software, right? The officer can pick up their phone, log the meter entry, but they don't do it. They don't do it consistently, and it's really hard to get them to train them into getting into a habit. And if they're not doing it, then there's all these downstream effects of making the software not work. And also like mobile booking. So mobile booking today with motor pool technology is very, very easy. Again, you can control access to your units just from your phone. Another emerging feature that's coming is rule-based assignments. So the system can automatically allocate vehicles based on factors like shift schedule, unit, or vehicle health. So for example, if a car has a service reminder or has a flagged issue, it's automatically withheld from the pool until it can be repaired. So an officer's not going to jump into a unit that's having some issues. And then lastly, again, clear responsibility. Each booking is tied to an officer's profile. So if damage occurs, there's no question about accountability. The who dented this car question becomes a lot easier to solve. So a fleet manager from a large metro police department was telling me their biggest headache wasn't budgets and maintenance, which I was surprised by. I thought for sure it was really all about cost, because what isn't about cost these days? But he said that their biggest challenge was accountability. So for years they pooled their fleet, ran handwritten logs, and did a key cabinet system, and officers would come in at the start of the shift and sign out a vehicle in a notebook, grab the keys, and head out. But the problem was that the system was only as reliable as the person filling out the log. So if someone forgot to write down their name, if handwriting was illegible, or if two people grabbed the same keys, the records really become meaningless. So he described one incident that stuck with him. A patrol car came back at the end of the night with a major dent in the front bumper. When they checked the logbook, it was impossible to figure out who had last driven it. So for 4 different names, and had scribbled across the day, 2 of them without times, one without a badge number, and one with handwritten, the list goes on. But so the officer who turned the car in insisted that he didn't do the dent. You can see, it wasn't me, it was him, all of those things. But when they transitioned to an automated system, all of that changed. The data capture was automatic. So odometer readings, fuel levels, and even vehicle condition were right there. They didn't really have to rely on manual logs. And the rule-based assignments, if a vehicle had an incoming service due for maintenance, it was automatically pulled from the available pool, so nobody was accidentally checking it out. And but the biggest breakthrough came with clear responsibility. So every booking was tied to an officer's digital profile. If a dent or new damage appeared, the system made it obvious who last had custody of the vehicle, and there was no finger pointing or guesswork. So the fleet manager said accountability shifted almost overnight. And suddenly his officers treated vehicles like they were their own because they knew that the system was tracking their usage transparently. And vehicles started coming back cleaner with fewer incidents and minor damage. And supervisors stopped really wasting hours investigating logbooks, instead could focus on the bigger picture priorities. For a direct quote, he said it completely flipped the culture. Before, everyone assumed someone else was going to take responsibility. Now the accountability was built into the system. So number 2, keyless access. As I mentioned before, it's easier than you may think. Managing physical keys has always been a pain point. Lost keys, manual checkouts, expensive kiosks and lock boxes, but the future is keyless access, and officers can unlock vehicles directly with their phone or a secure fob. No more wasted time tracking down keys. There's reduced administration overhead and lower long-term costs. So for police departments where speed and readiness are critical, keyless entry eliminates unnecessary delays and makes vehicle access as simple as just tapping a screen. And the third is really the real-time utilization insight. So one of the biggest blind spots in traditional fleet management is understanding how vehicles are actually being used. So modern systems make utilization metrics very transparent. Assignment history becomes more clear. Utilization by shift and hours is a lot more clear. Maintenance integration, all of those things all together under one umbrella are starting to make things a lot easier. The same fleet manager I was talking to, he swore up and down that his department didn't have enough vehicles. Every shift, officers complained about availability, but once they implemented a system in real-time utilization tracking, the data told a different story. It turned out that nearly 20% of their cars were sitting idle on a regular basis, some barely touched in weeks. So what they thought was a shortage was actually a scheduling problem. And with that insight, they were able to reassign vehicles and reduce their total fleet size and still meet demand. And the kicker was that they saved enough to reduce maintenance and insurance costs to fund upgrades to their existing vehicles. And last, this is more low-hanging fruit. You guys are probably already implementing this. Is definitely pulling your specialized units. So not all vehicles are created equal, but for specialized units like crime scene vans and tactical trucks, they're expensive and often underutilized. So when assigned to a single unit full-time, they can often have a lot of idle time. So by placing these assets in a shared pool, departments ensure they're only checked out as needed. So this reduces the total number of specialty vehicles required and ensures high-value assets deliver maximum return on investment. So 3 big drivers for the next generation of motor pool technology. We look at the future. These are the primary 3. So self-serve scheduling. Officers can book and access vehicles without bottlenecks and supervisors. The system handles assignments automatically, factoring in shift schedules, vehicle health, and location. And this creates flexibility and reduces friction. The second is keyless handoffs. Secure keyless entry ensures definitive audit trails and accountability. Every access event is tied to a specific officer, reducing disputes and improving trust. And live telematics integration is a must-have. So real-time vehicle health monitoring automates alerts and maintenance and tracks mileage accurately. Also ensures that vehicles are always ready for use, which closes the loop between usage and upkeep. And not to be a broken record, as you've seen this slide before, but to drive the point home, motor pool is a proven effective lever in savings and fit for fixed expenses. So as I think it was Benjamin Franklin once said, in this world nothing can be said to be certain but death and taxes. Well, in fleet management, nothing is certain except scarcity of parts and rising vehicle costs. So, and the experts agree, optimizing vehicle use is the most effective and rapid way to improve fleet efficiency. By assessing vehicle utilization, fleet managers can identify opportunities to streamline the vehicle assignments. So the biggest savings that come from motor pool technology: reducing assigned vehicles by offering a shared option, optimizing the use of vehicles that are already shared, and reducing labor hours. Some best practices for advocating for a hybrid model or implementing a motor pool system. it sounds logical on paper. This is one thing that I learned talking to a few on police departments. Again, everything I mentioned, cost savings, better utilization, streamlined workflows. In practice, I've heard it's pretty difficult to implement. The barriers aren't very technical. They're cultural, organizational, and human. So let's walk through some of the biggest factors that impact your ability to be successful when you're looking at a tool to implement for a motor pool. So one thing is overcoming a cultural barrier. So a fleet manager I spoke with recently summed it up perfectly. He said, it's a culture thing. What he meant by that was that departments, divisions, or teams simply don't want to share, and it actually makes a lot of sense. Everyone's focused on their own needs. They've got a really important job to do. Shared pool access is actually pretty risky for them. That means maybe they're not ready for their shifts and their job that they're having to do. So, they're thinking things like, what if we don't have enough cars in peak hours, or the fire department, might worry, what if one of our rigs isn't available when we need it the most? And these concerns are not unfounded. They're a reality. So the fear of being left out of critical resources leads teams to hoard vehicles, even if its result is underutilization and driving costs. So one manager described that he proposed pulling snow plows across different municipal departments, and Public Works was hesitant. So they wanted full control over their plows because they feared that they would be last in line during a storm. But to build trust, he started by kind of sharing data and showing how motor pool could work, and a shared pool actually is for the better, not the worse of everybody. So he showed them specifically how snow plows would sit idle and then use technology to guarantee scheduling transparency. And over time, the data helped them shift the conversation from fear of loss to opportunity for efficiency. So key takeaway there is implementing the right system, one that creates transparency and eliminates the black box scheduling, can gradually change mindsets and culture in an organization. But technology alone won't fix culture, but it can remove a big excuse of not to share. Second thing is finding a champion to get buy-in. So every successful pooling program I've seen has a champion, someone in leadership who believes in the vision and is willing to advocate for it. I heard a story about a motor pool rollout that was struggling until the chief of police stepped in. He publicly endorsed the program and assigned some of his own units to the pool, and explained that sharing freed up budget for better training and newer vehicles. So once he backed it, the resistance pretty much dropped, and everybody got in line. So main takeaway there is, if you're looking to start implementing a system like this, find an influential voice who can say, hey, this is good for us, and reinforce the reasons why. Also, communicating the change in positive terms. A lot of times when people are fearful of a scarcity of a resource, reframing things in positive terms can be really important. So the way that you're talking about pooling your vehicles or shifting your assignment models is really important. If it's framed as taking something away, like reducing the number of officers who have take-home vehicles, for example, you'll encounter some resistance. But if it's framed as gaining flexibility and resources, the message lands a little better. One manager told me about introducing a motor pool by focusing not on cost savings, but on new opportunities. So he explained to his officers that pooled vehicles would be newer, better maintained, and more reliable because the program freed up budget and for timely replacement. So instead of hearing you're losing your assigned car, they heard you're getting access to higher quality vehicles. So that shift in tones turned skeptics into supporters. So takeaway there is try and position pooling as an addition to what people already have, not a subtraction. And then the not so fun one is drafting the policies and enforcing them. The whole team needs to be bought in, and the clear policies need to be documented and shared regularly with the team. So it doesn't work without clear rules, but accountability is baked into the system already, so hopefully that's a little bit alleviated by clearly documenting the policies. So draft clear policies, make them easy to understand, and back them up with enforcement mechanisms. This builds fairness and consistency. So another thing that I heard that of some, missteps along the way of implementing a system this way, it was really biting off a little bit more than you could chew. So trying to roll out pooling across an entire fleet at once can backfire big time. Because a really important part of using a pooled fleet of resources is making sure that the experience for the officers using the pooled resources is a good one. So if you roll it out too fast, they have a bad experience, then you're just kind of tanked from the beginning. So one agency I talked to was starting small, just pulling their specialty vehicles, their crime scene vans and SWAT trucks. So these vehicles were expensive, they were underutilized, and they were kind of low emotion assets, so no one was deeply attached to them. And then after 6 months, utilization data showed significant cost savings and downtime decreased. So with that proof that he had in hand, leadership felt confident about expanding the pooling to standard patrol units. So again, start small with low-hanging fruit, like with your specialty units first, and then prove out the system, and then you can expand into your other units. So, closing thought, advocating for pulling assets isn't about really forcing change. It's about guiding people through cultural barriers and showing the value. Building trust, starting by changing the narrative, securing a champion, putting clear policies in place, and providing success on a small scale. So over time, sharing becomes less about giving something up and more about gaining efficiency, flexibility, and resources.